this is this is kind of new for everybody on here. So um, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. So Brandon and Tiffany, they work for employees, and employees is responsible for doing a lot of like the human resource work for Cleveland Clinic when it comes to, just some of their staffing needs. So what they have right now, as everyone's seen on the flyer that was sent out, is EVS or janitorial, patient transport, and then there is textiles and linens. So those positions are throughout the Cleveland Clinic. So there are several locations in the county. And so Tiffany and Brandon will go over all that today. And then at the end, we'll have, a Q&A and, by all means, if you have a question, you can wait till the end to ask the question, or you can type it into the chat box. So Brandon, Tiffany, the floor is yours. So.
All right. Well, I can start it off. Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Wirtz. I'm with employees. It's nice to meet you all. So we'll just kind of start off by the basic duties for each position. For the EVS, like Chris mentioned, you basically would be entering patient rooms, tidying up, cleaning floors, bathrooms, things like that. It is also going to be a customer service type position as well, because you want to go in with a smile. They're in the hospital, they're probably not having the best day, so you want to go in, try to brighten their day a little bit. Now with this position, the pay rate does start on a tiered based system. So it's just based on experience and kind of longevity and experience within your past positions. That can range from $10 to $12 starting out, and that would be decided just based on your resume. With that, and all of these positions will be a temp to hire position. So with that, you would be with the Cleveland Clinic for about 90 days or so. Within that time period, you really kind of want to put your best foot forward. Make sure your attendance is good, your production is good, because if you're doing really well with them, they're going to want to hire you in full time through them. At that point, your pay would jump up to $15 an hour, and you would be eligible for their benefits as well. So that's their medical, dental, 401k, all that. And a little extra perk with the clinic too, they actually have a tuition reimbursement program. So if you're looking to go back to school or something like that, that could be something that interests you as well. Okay. Now I'll just go into the other positions a bit as well. Now, patient transport, that is going to have the community service, oh my gosh, the customer service as well. Now, you'll be basically just transporting patients from their rooms to their different appointments or tests, scans, things like that, back to their rooms. Maybe they're being discharged. It's a lot of transportation from one place to the other. With that position too, you may have to, do a little bit of heavier lifting. You'll have to assist the patients from their beds to wheelchairs and so on. There would be a physical test once you get hired in, so that is something to think about as well. That position does start out at $11 an hour, but it is the same with EVS in regards to being hired in, and your pay would jump up to $15 once you're hired in. Now let's see. The linen position. This position is in their linen and textile department. You would be kind of in the more like basement area of the hospital. So you're not going to do as much customer service with this one. This one does start out at $13 an hour, so it's a little bit higher, but the position is very different. With this one, you're basically transporting linen. You're using linen carts going from, the linen chutes from, the dirty linens to transporting them onto trucks, vice versa. You'll be folding linens, things like that, folding gowns, things like that. And all of these positions are trained, so you're not expected to have, any real experience going in. They will train you going in for at least 2 weeks. They usually do at least a 2-week training period for everyone. Okay. Are there any questions after my little spiel?
Oh,
No.
go ahead, Christine. I was going to say I have a few, but go
Okay.
ahead.
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm the transition coordinator at Orange High School. I have a couple of my graduating seniors on the call. And can you talk a little bit more about the tuition reimbursement and what that looks like once an individual will be hired on with the Cleveland Clinic?
Sure. And I'll be honest, I'm not, directly involved with that. So I'm not sure exactly all that entails. Brandon, do you have any more to go on
I
that?
can help
Okay.
that. Yeah. Essentially, with the tuition reimbursement, it's kind of based on how long you've actually been out there. So once you're hired in, and this doesn't count like the day that you actually start for us, because you would essentially be working under us as a third-party contractor until you are hired in. Essentially, whenever you do transition over to be a full-time CCF employee, from that point forward, for the first 4 years that you're there, if you were to apply for any given actual schooling, whatever you're going for, they essentially just credit you $2,000 back that you just apply towards that. If you're there for longer, like 5 years, then I think it ends up being like $25,000 to $3,000. What we kind of caught is, depending on how you're kind of going or what route you're going, like for me, I transitioned over to Tri-C. The $2,000 essentially covered a full year to a huge extent to get your prerequisites out of the way. From there, you are kind of working directly. And the biggest thing that I tell people too, whenever you're working for the clinic, regardless of if it's transport, EVS, linen, market yourself. Go in there and introduce yourself to people. If you want to go work as an electrician for the Cleveland Clinic, go talk to the electrical people there and actually kind of work to get your name out there and say, hey, I have interest. Can you provide me any more information as far as what a good approach would be? If you want to go for nursing directed towards ICU, or maybe for labor and delivery, go in and talk to the labor and delivery nurses and kind of get their insight as well. And apply that outside of just the tuition reimbursement that they offer.
Okay. And another question I have is, what percent of individuals would you say go from, being a temporary employee to getting hired on by the clinic?
So as of lately, extremely high. It's a weird thing where I don't want to give a definite answer, in the sense of each department's just different. You're going to have different hiring managers, different people you're working under. A lot of times there's an instance where we send somebody for EVS or linen and they just say, hey, you know what, this position's not for me. You send them to transport and they get hired in directly. With the clinic, their main goal is to transition you over. So within a 2-week time period, if you are not picking up on the position, they just feel like the attendance and performance isn't there, they'll flat out tell you, hey, this is where we need to kind of gear you towards. This is where you have to get better. But they're not going to waste anybody's time. They don't like keeping people on our payroll, especially if they have no intention of transitioning them over. The reason that they use us as a third-party contractor is one of multiple reasons, but if you were to apply through the clinic directly, it would take anywhere of 1 to 3 months to actually get a start date. We can typically transition you over to start within 2 weeks. And then while you're working under our payroll, you're typically filling out that application. You also have the insight of the hiring manager there. So they're telling you exactly what to do, the quickest time to do it. They're telling you an exact time frame. And we've had it where actually a lady that's going through the onboarding for patient transport, she went and met with the hiring managers for patient transport. They brought her on through us, but she also applied for patient transport on her own and she was rejected through patient transport. So she reached out to me and said, hey, I got this email rejecting me. Does that apply for you? It doesn't. The hiring managers then kind of overstep that boundary and say, no, we want to bring you on. We just want to review your attendance and performance for this period. And then from there, I'm going to make sure you get hired in. So, I mean, it's a 50-50 kind of jump ball there, because it is based on a variety of things, but provided that the attendance and performance is good, EVS, linen, transport, if things are working out 100% of the time, they're going to try and transition you over. They really do not keep you on our payroll just to keep you there or just to release you.
Now, what about age requirement? Is it 18?
I believe so, but certain circumstances they can get by with. If you had somebody specifically that was a little bit younger, essentially I would just ask you to send me their information. I would
Okay.
forward it to the manager and just see that they could accommodate it, because sometimes it's just based on a work schedule.
Right.
And that's just kind of what it comes down to, but
Okay.
sometimes they could work around that.
Okay, because one of my guys in the, he'll be 18 in a couple months. So I just didn't know if he had to wait or if it's something even at, almost 18, if they can get the process started.
That shouldn't be an issue, especially because they're not the full-time employer. Technically, we are.
Okay.
So as long
Okay.
as they're meeting the criteria for the hours, that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, and what do those hours look like?
Depending on the department, like EVS typically has the straight 7 a.m. to 3:30, 3 to 11:30. They don't offer much third shift, or they prefer not to. Occasionally, regardless of department, you may get a third shift, but typically it's first and second. They also offer part-time hours. So certain areas like Hillcrest, we have part-time hours where it's working 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. With main campus, we have part-time hours where it's working like a 5 to 9:30. So it can be pendant. Sometimes they could be relatively flexible. Certain managers have like a 2 to 10:30 over the 3 to 11:30. And typically if you have somebody younger or somebody who needs like their first shift hour set for schooling, we kind of tailor that to their need. Transport's a bit different. Typically they could go more mid shift. So it'd be like a 12 to 8:30, 2 to 10:30, 3 to 11:30, or they can do first shift, but usually if they try and kind of gear you towards that mid shift, second shift. Again, we will essentially, upon meeting with the actual individual and seeing what their need is, we would kind of just send them over and tailor it to their need, because I'm not going to send them to a department, working late hours if they have to be up at 6 a.m. for school.
And Brandon, that was going to be my next question for everybody, because I have gotten this question a lot. Are there part-time, full-time positions? It sounds like everything can kind of somewhat be tailored around people's schedules. But as you know, Brandon, and I'm sure Tiffany, a lot of the individuals that we do work with, they have to work part-time because they have to watch their benefits and stuff. So that's just one of the questions that I've been getting a lot. And so I figured I'd ask you to see what you guys would say.
So as far as that, we work we actually have 2 people that specifically can only work part-time hours. They need to make less than a certain amount of money. The Cleveland Clinic understands that as well. And I mean, typically the way that you can look at it is, people can get nervous at the fact that it's a big organization such as the Cleveland Clinic. We kind of break it down on the fact of I'm sending you to a human being as far as the hiring manager. So typically I'm not going to send somebody to a position where either, the drive's not worth the pay or something just to try and fill a position. We're going to actually send you to a manager that we feel can actually kind of get, it's going to benefit all 3 parties involved. So usually with that, we're very blunt and open and saying, hey, this is kind of what's going on. And a lot of the feedback that we've gotten recently too has been the fact that the hiring managers definitely want to work with them. They're not going to lose a good employee over a few hours. So the part-time aspect really isn't a big deal, provided that they can accommodate more of what their part-time hours would be. But we can definitely work around that.
I know in the past, we've worked together, and a lot of the managers have been very accommodating when it comes to job coaching. So I just wanted to ask that, because that's usually another popular question is, are they okay with coaching, especially right now with the pandemic and everything? Are you sure about that? Like, are they allowed to have visitors in now? Because I guess a coach would constitute as a visitor.
So what usually would happen, the Cleveland Clinic does have job coaching that they can provide, but I will say that they've been more short-staffed trying to get everything else situated, that I personally would prefer that a actual job coach could be brought in directly, and it would just be for the benefit of whoever that person is, just in being completely blunt and, open and honest. With the job coaching though, we've had people that went in through Maine that they can, what you have to do is whenever an employee, they decide that they want to hire them in, they have to go through the onboarding process. And that's the process that takes about 1.5, 2 weeks. Whoever the job coach is would also have to go through that onboarding process, just like they're a temporary contractor through us. They get a badge, and once they have that badge, they're perfectly accessible to go through. So we've had multiple job coaches that were out at Hillcrest, we've had them at Maine and so on. The only thing that I just asked is that communication, so I can kind of tell the hiring manager, hey, this is what the circumstance is going to be for the first few weeks, let's kind of work around that. And typically they've been perfectly fine with that.
And the other question that I was getting a lot to was just, are all these positions open at all your locations, and what are your locations?
As far as our, yes, we have a huge need. Hillcrest Hospital and main campus do predominantly like patient transport, and they have usually a bigger need. I will always kind of tell you that that is kind of more geared towards that mid shift, second shift for transport. EVS, we are kind of distributed throughout. So Fairview Hospital, Euclid Hospital, Maine, Hillcrest, not so much Marymount and so on. Linen would just be more geared occasionally towards like Fairview Hospital in Maine. And yeah, they are realistically coming open at kind of as is. Typically what I tell people too, if somebody were interested in transport or something specific through EVS, I would, and it just wasn't available, I would pretty much keep their name in my back pocket for about a week or two and then resend them back over to try and set up that interview. So we are kind of seeing that fluctuation come through. It's consistently open though, and yes, we do have a wide variety of the positions always there.
Does anyone have any questions? I know I'm kind of hijacking the question session here, but if no one does, I have a few more that I just kind of wanted to cover.
I was wondering about next steps and interview process, setting that up.
So with the interview process, we usually either bring them in or we've been doing virtual interviews. So either Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, things like that, whatever is easiest for the individual. As far as interviews with Cleveland Clinic themselves, it really just depends on the supervisor. A lot of them are just kind of taking our input in and just saying, let's get them started, let's get them out. While others do like to have that face-to-face conversation. Now, the steps after that, if they're interested and, everything works out, then like Brandon said, we would pursue the onboarding. Like you said, that does take about 2 weeks usually. And in that process, there's you have to get a TB test. I don't know if you're familiar. There's a bit of like online training where they just kind of go over policies, things like that. But it's relatively easy and straightforward, and it doesn't take too much time.
I have a question. Sorry. So tomorrow for these open interviews, I have someone that works until 4:30, and would that be against him if he's in uniform? He's trying to see if he can get off a little early, but I just don't know if that is possible.
That's completely fine. I personally, it doesn't matter what they wear for me.
Okay.
If he's right off work, that's completely
Okay.
fine. I would say if he is going out to the clinic, maybe try to be a little bit more, presentable.
Right. We're talking just about the interview tomorrow.
Okay. Yes.
So for everyone on the call, Amy, just to correct you, the open interviews will be Thursday.
Oh, okay.
So not tomorrow. So Thursday open interviews from 10 to 5 with the 1 o'clock hour being blocked off for lunch for Tiffany and Brandon. So if anybody has questions in regard to that or needs the flyer, again, I can send it out to everybody. So.
And then Chris, we email you for a time slot. Is that correct?
Yeah. So everybody email me for a time slot. I've already had several people sign up for time slots. And so once I have everybody that, wants to jump on for open interviews, I'm going to send my spreadsheet over to Brandon and Tiffany so they know who's coming in. I'll be there, but maybe not the whole day. So, but if you guys do have questions, Amy, Christine, whoever else is on the call, feel free to reach out to me. But Tiffany and Brandon are very approachable if you guys are there, and they're very willing and wonderful when it comes to questions. So,
Are these in-person open interviews?
yes, but
Okay.
Brandon and Tiffany have said that they can make an accommodation and do Zoom as well if that individual can't make it, or if that individual doesn't feel comfortable, going in person. So,
Okay.
And typically, just to kind of piggyback off of that as well, but what we tend to see with the interviews, we don't mind so much. We're very easygoing. I showed up in a thermal today. So we're very easygoing. We just like to have a conversation, and it allows us to kind of get a feel for who we're sending out. But typically we're also trying to job coach them or coach them for their next interview with whoever we're setting them up for. We know our managers and kind of what they're looking for. We understand their personalities a bit. So whenever we can kind of meet with the individuals, it allows us to kind of break that part down and say, what, I think you could be a really good fit for this area. Let's kind of talk about this a little bit further. And then we kind of set them up with the best information we can for the interview with that manager. If it came to the point where you had somebody who had to go to the Cleveland Clinic, even in uniform, we just communicate that, and that's never been an issue. So everybody seems to be relatively easygoing, even on the aspect of who they'd be interviewing with at, main campus or Hillcrest or the other locations.
So the one thing I wanted to also have you guys talk about, Brandon and Tiffany, is just requirements. So some of the requirements, for the clinic, such as, I know you kind of covered the background check and the TB test, but also for those who don't know, the Cleveland Clinic is a nicotine or tobacco-less campus. So that's a huge thing that, they try to push as well. So I don't know if you guys could talk a little more about that process as well.
So with that, like you mentioned, they do have a relatively strict background check going in. They will have that patient interaction, so there's lots of liability and things with that. So they can be kind of picky going in with that, in particular theft and violent charges. Now they will have to also pass a drug test through us, and then also another one from them, when they are going to be hired in. Now, we don't specifically test for nicotine, but with that said, they can't go in smelling like tobacco or things like that, because patients may have, certain illnesses or things that could trigger a negative response. As far as other qualifications, really what the clinic is looking for is just kind of that stability. They like to see that longevity within their past positions. And if they are a new candidate, coming right out of high school, they also like to see that as well. They're pretty open and easy to work with. Basically, if you're going to show up every day, you're going to do your job, they're going to love to have you.
And a little bit further, to also kind of curve, they do look for the background or the actual work history. With that being said, if you can have a conversation, and point blank period, if you could sell me, I'll do what I can to get you sent over and actually back you. And for the most part, they're going to feel the same way, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with the patients, and the patients come before anybody else. If you're having a crappy day, quite frankly, the patients don't care. You still need to put a smile on your face and figure that part out. So as long as you can hold that conversation, show that side of empathy, that's really what a huge part of what they're looking for is. As far as the actual background checks, it's just wonky. So I've had people with violent charges that got through peachy keen, no problem. And then you have people with a petty theft that fail. So it can just be based on the actual department that they're in. With that being said, I'm not going to discourage anybody from coming in and applying, because at least I can get an idea and see if I could get them sent out to another area that could be beneficial for them. once they do have to go through onboarding through us, which includes the TB test and so on. Another aspect of it is once they're being hired in or during that time of year, they do require the annual flu shots. So that's like a part of it. But the actual requirements to get hired in directly, the only thing that, like, if you can get through the onboarding through us, which is short and sweet, the whole reason I'm here is actually to assist everybody through that onboarding. They could get through that portion. The only thing that they really have to be concerned about is the PCE test, and they've lightened the requirements on those. The PCE test, it's essentially like a strength test where they have like a bar set up. The bar registers a certain amount of force. You have to be able to lift the bar up with your hand straight out. You have to be able to kick the bar with your leg like a leg extension, and so on. As long as they could pass that, which usually 9 out of 10 people do, that shouldn't be an issue for actually getting hired in as a full-time CCF employee.
So we had a question in the chat where the open interviews were taking place. So I put the your guys' location in the chat, but you guys are located on Euclid in Willoughby. So for everyone that's on there, the address is in the chat, but it's also in the flyer. So if you guys need the flyer, it's got all the descriptions and stuff that Tiffany and Brandon have been covering in regard to some of the specifics of the jobs. Are there any questions on the call? I wasn't sure if anyone else had any questions. Amy, Christine, I know you guys had a few questions. Anybody else?
I have one last question. If now I have to circle back, with my students, if they are interested in doing the open interviews, are you okay if I join them? I also like to provide feedback, to my students and their interviewing skills and that kind of thing. So is that okay?
Of course, we prefer that because all in all, you know your students better than anybody too. So I think the more that, and provided, things go well and we are working together too, the more that you and I kind of talk, Tiffany, you talk, we kind of get a feel for what we're looking to do as well. So I mean, I prefer that you guys are in there. Every time that Chris had brought somebody in, I much rather prefer Chris or Eric had been there for the interview too, just because there may be certain things that we may be missing out on, or there may have been something that maybe I said a little bit indifferently that needed to be recorrected. So yes, much rather prefer that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, I do have a question. I missed a little bit about the patient transport. So where can I access this recording so I can just go back through?
I'm going to throw it up on the website as soon as we are done with this. It's just going to have to, take some time to kind of, load up there, but probably within the next half hour, I'll put it up there. And Amy, I can send you the link as well. And the flyer too, if you have questions. So not a big deal. And everybody, that goes for everybody. The recording of this today will be on our website under the resource page. So employmentcollaborative.com for those who are uncertain what the website address is. So are there any other questions on the call? Brandon, Tiffany, is there anything that maybe we're forgetting that maybe we might want to bring up? I can't think of anything, but
I think for the most part, at the end of the day, if it is something that, anybody's interested in regardless, I think that coming in and having a conversation with us, again, even outside of it, I don't look at us trying to directly look at this as an interview. I look at it as having a conversation. So even if somebody may be not interested so much in the aspect of a hospital, I'm still open to talking to them and seeing if I can maybe guide them or direct them in the correct way. And I know Tiffany feels the same exact way. So, we're open and honest with about everything. So we're excited to see kind of how everything turns out. And we're excited to get interviewing on Thursday.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to piggyback off of Brandon, when I was a job developer, I used Brandon a lot, and so Brandon has a very good idea of job development and job coaching and what our jobs consist of. So he's he's pretty good in that regard. Tiffany, I'm not too sure, but I know you have an understanding as well. So everybody on the call, just know that they are fully aware of the individuals we serve and the types of jobs that we do for the individuals that we serve. So they're very aware of like coaching and job development, and they kind of get how that goes. So please know that as well. Anybody else on the call? Any questions? Anything else? No? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Tiffany, Brandon, especially, thank you for your guys' time. I'm looking forward to Thursday, and I hope to see everybody on the call out there. If you guys do have questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can direct those questions to Tiffany and Brandon. But if there's no other questions, everyone have a great day, and I'll see you Thursday.
Thank you all for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet everyone. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.